Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. In this video, we are going to focus on enhancing details. The small details in any image are so important. Let's get started. Let's start here in Lightroom, which is a great system to add some clarity, bring out and emphasize certain parts of your subject. So these techniques will work with any subject, whether it's a landscape scene, a group of people, or flowers or something in nature, a car, a building. These techniques can work. You just may need to adjust how much of the technique you apply. So let's get started. And the first thing that we can do with an image like this is we can always add texture and clarity. And you're probably familiar with those two tools here in Lightroom. Now, one thing I like to do with the new mask features is use a mask to really highlight where I want those. So for this image, I want to bring out the details in the center of my flower. So I'm going to use a radial gradient. I'm going to bring that in, and it is going to create our mask right here in the center. And you have the options of how much you want to feather it. So I want it to be a very gradual, so I want to feather it probably about 50%. Okay, I'm going to hide the overlay. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And now what I'm going to do is add just a little texture first, but I definitely want to add some clarity. And already we can see the difference. Now I don't want too much, and so you have to play with it because I don't want it to be kind of too crunched up. What I'm also going to do is open the shadows and maybe bring down the highlights just a tiny bit, and then pop the whites a little to give it a little bit of some brightness as well. So when you're wanting to do details, you need to think about your exposure also. Is it an area of the image that needs just a little pop to brighten it up? We don't want to overdo it. We don't want to blow out the highlights, but we do want to make this area really stand out and draw the viewer's eye in. So adding that little bit of texture and some clarity can make a difference. So let's click done. I'm going to scroll out, and now I'm going to show you before and after. Now let me actually go to my history over here, and I'm going to show you before the radial so you can see the center of the image, and now after. So it really makes that center pop and brings out those details. Okay, so that's one way using these tools here in Lightroom can really make a difference. Now you can also use the mask tools and create another mask, and you can even use the brush. So if there was a particular part of your image that you wanted to enhance, you could just use the brush and really, mask and bring in and add more detail somewhere that you want. Now you can also use the sharpening tool. So that's another way. If I wanted to come around to these bottom petals and maybe add a little bit of sharpness to those. And if we look before and after, probably a little bit of a definition in those petals. We could also add just a little bit of contrast and maybe a little pop of exposure as well. Now, if I like that, I can go ahead and use my brush and apply it all the way around this area to really make this flower pop. All right, so let me show you that before and after. So let's go to, this is before those last changes with sharpen, and this is after. If you just look at these petals, I think you'll be able to see the difference. There it is before, and here it is after. So yeah, really nice pop there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a snapshot. So if you haven't used snapshots yet, I highly recommend it. I'm going to call this my detail edit 1. And I'm going to create that. Now I do have some other cleanup to do on this image, but we're going to focus on details right now. So I'm going to go back to where I had before I did the radial gradient. And I'm going to go ahead and call this snapshot my original. Okay, so we've got both of those saved in the snapshot. What's great about the snapshot is I can go see that image and then I can go to my original edit. So if I don't want to scroll through my history, I have them saved, and that's the beauty of the snapshot. It doesn't make another copy of your image, but it gives you a time and place, kind of like a timestamp. So I'm going to go to this original image, and now what I want to do is show you using Photoshop how to add some detail. So we're going to right click and go to Edit in Photoshop. And there are lots of ways to add detail in Photoshop, but I'm going to show you some of my favorite tools. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is duplicate our background layer, Command J, or you can right click and do duplicate layer. And one of the easiest ways to add some immediate detail to your image is to go to Filter, Other, and do a high pass filter. Now it's going to give you this gray weird screen, and you can increase it as much as you want. So I'm just going to do a little bit. I usually like to keep it around 7 or 8, so you can see this kind of detail that's coming out. Let's go ahead and take it up to 9 so that you guys can see it at home. We're going to click OK. Now we don't want this gray layer, so we're going to go to our blend mode and we're going to change it to overlay. Now we have our image back, but I'm going to show you, and let me zoom in a little bit. It's going to be very subtle, but here's our before and here's our after. So just look at these petals, and they're very soft, and now we've got some definition in there. Now, if you don't like that much, you can always reduce the opacity. So we could take it down a little bit, and then we still have that's without. So I really like to look at this petal, and that is with. So that's just a real subtle difference. So that's a very easy way if you just want to add a little bit to a particular part of your image. Now we can also do some brightening, and we can do some other adjustments. So if we come down to our adjustment tools, we can do some different things here to bring out some details. We can always go to curves and brighten a particular area of our image. So I'm going to brighten the whites and highlights, and then I'm going to come and invert that layer. I want a white brush so that I can bring out the curve that I just applied. And I'm going to come around and just brighten the center of this flower, which immediately brings out the detail. So sometimes we think of sharpening or details being, adding structure or clarity, but it also is when you really need to brighten an area so that it is where your eye goes versus it being kind of dark and the shadows being hindered. Okay, so that's another important feature. Now I'm going to go back to the background, and I'm going to duplicate my layer, and I want to go over, and there is the sharpen tool, which sharpens the soft edges of an image. So we can grab that, and let me go ahead and turn off the high pass because I want you to be able to see the difference. So I'm going to work on this large petal right here, and I'm on the sharpen, and I'm just going to apply it on this side of the image. Now look what it's done already. Now we are at 50% strength, and you're going to see it is really going to sharpen and bring out details. So it's going to take a minute to process, but you can already see what it's done to these petals. So when you use this tool, you definitely want to think about using it at maybe 10, 15% to start with. It does not take a lot at all. So what you can do if you use too much, you can come over to your opacity slider and you can bring that down. But you can see it still looks like almost like it has a little bit of noise. So you have to be careful using that sharpen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo that one. I'm going to duplicate another layer. And now let's take this down to about 10-15%. And I'm going to get a smaller brush, and I'm just going to go around the edges to bring out some detail. Now this is going to be, I could even take it up to 20%. This would be where you could really customize your image, just bringing a little bit of sharpen to it. So if I turn this off and on, it's very subtle. You probably can hardly see it. Let's take the strength up to 50% and come around with it. That's definitely bringing out more detail. And the more you go over it, the more it's going to enhance. You can see it gets a little crunchy right there. So it's not my favorite tool to use. I prefer some of the other methods, but I did want you to know it's there, and it is a way, as long as you stay below 50%, you should have the ability to add some detail and kind of some structure and bring out some of the lines in your image. Now, another way we can duplicate our background layer, another fun filter if you're doing something creative, is you can go to Filters, Stylize, and you can do Emboss, you could do Find Edges, you could also add Oil Paint. So all of these are great options. So Find Edges is going to give you this view, and we can change the strength, can take it all the way up if we wanted. And then you can change your blend mode. So you can go to Overlay, you could go to Screen. I think Soft Light makes it a little bit, you've got Color Burn. Color Burn's definitely bringing out some details. And then you don't have to have your opacity at 100%. You can take it down. So let me show you this before. So that's without. If you kind of look in this petal area again, there is with it. So that is an option as well. And if you like that, you may then want to go in and reduce your noise on your image. So what we can do is get a new stamped layer. To do that, it's Command, Option, Shift, and the letter E. Now we have a clean stamped layer. And what I'm going to do now is Filter, and we're going to do, let's see, Noise, and we're going to do Reduce Noise. What we want to do is just reduce any noise that's in the image, especially since we made all these changes. And what we want to do is take strength all the way up, preserve details. We want to bring that down. And it's going to take just a minute to process. Some of these programs in Photoshop do take some time to process. So it's taking my image all over the place. Let me snap that back into place. Okay, so we're going to move Preserve Details down and Color Noise down. I find that you don't need all of those up on high, and Sharpen Details very little. Again, we don't want to add more kind of noise, or you can decide. You can see as I move it up what it's doing to the image. So I don't want it to look kind of pixelated and weird. So it can tend to do that. Color noise, maybe about right there. And I'm going to take the Preserve Details down. And let's click OK and see how it looks. All right, so let's see before and after. Yeah, so it's definitely brought out, and definitely reducing the noise, got rid of some of that noise and brought out some more details. So several ways in Photoshop. There are other more advanced techniques that you might be familiar with, but these are just some that you can do really quick when you're looking to just add a little bit of punch to your image. So let's go back again to our original edit. And now I want to show you using Topaz Studio 2. Now, Topaz Studio 2 is one of my favorite programs. It is a standalone. You purchase the program, and it's a program that was created for creative editing. And it does an amazing job of bringing out details. It uses AI technology, and it also has some creative brush tools that really enhance details. Now, you may be familiar, Topaz also has a Sharpen program, an AI Sharpen, and an AI Enhance, and an AI Denoise program. So they do have several programs that are meant to help bring out details, denoise your images, and those are separate from Topaz Studio 2. So here in Topaz Studio 2, the first thing is I like to do AI Clear. This is just going to get rid of noise, bring out some initial details, and it just kind of cleans up the image. It's really nice. Next, if you use Topaz, there is an option to add precision details. And here you have the option of small, medium, and large changes. So I really like to do these small changes, and we're going to start adding these details here. Now, again, look at this area, and you should already be able to see the changes, but I'm going to turn the effect off, and now I'm going to turn it on so you can see how much. And we can always click on this and reduce the opacity if we don't want but just a little bit of it. And you can also mask in Topaz. Now I'm going to turn this feature off, and I want to show you another way that you can add detail, and that's using the Add Look option. Now under Add Look, I'm going to go down to one of my favorite tools, and that is Fur and Feathers. And Fur and Feathers is a great technique that gives a lot of line detail. You can see right here how heavy it is. And what it does is it's really bringing out all of the fine lines and patterns in the image. So what we want to do is reduce the opacity in that so that it's just a little bit. So I like to do usually around about 20% is nice. And then click Apply. So now when we go up here, we can turn this off and back on. Look at the details it brought out. I think it just adds a very artistic look, especially to flowers. And remember, you can always change the opacity if you think it's too much. You can take it down to just a little bit. And even just a little bit of this really goes a long way. And when you're done in Topaz, the beautiful thing is you click Accept, and it's going to take the image back to Lightroom and add an additional image to your stack so that you have your original and now you have your edited in Topaz. So often we shoot an image maybe wide open or with a creative lens, and it's really soft and beautiful, but we do want to enhance and bring out some details. So I hope today I've given you several ideas and ways to do that, and I hope that you'll try them and have some fun making sure that you're enhancing your images in a really soft way, but also bringing out those beautiful details. Thanks, everyone.